So welcome everyone to the On-Ramp to Success podcast. We have as our guest today, Akpene Torku Sims. She just recently added the Sims. She got married recently. Yeah, there you go. So I'm going to read you a brief little bit about her background, and then we're going to dive right in. So she is the founder of Ezer, Unfolding Life and Business Development Coaching, which motivates women, small business owners, entrepreneurs, and other empire builders to define and clarify their goals and succeed in their purpose and calling. She's a speaker and a coach. She embodies the true meaning of an Ezer, which I'll let her explain. A strong person who protects and delivers, a strong ally, one who reflects the image of God. I know that tells us what it is, but I want to get her take on that. She inspires people to find that Ezer within themselves through assessment, encouragement, and equipping, which in turn allows them to step into powerful leaders who slay obstacles, deliver quality services or products, and leave an incredible mark in their spheres of influence. Tell us in your own words. I know we got a little bit of a definition of it, what an Ezer is, but tell us the background behind that.
So I was actually looking at that word, and it's a Hebrew word, and it comes from the word help. But our mindset of what help is and what that word really means really struck a chord in me, because that word in context, it just doesn't mean somebody who just helps assist you. But a lot of the times when that phrase is used in the Bible, it means military aid. It means somebody that comes in and is somewhat of a rescue, but really helps you win at what you're doing.
I like that.
So did I. So that's why I named my business that. Yes. And so I see a huge potential in everybody. I think everybody has potential, and a lot of people may have a glimmer of it. And so I named my business Ezer Unfolding, because I want to help people unfold that potential that's within themselves. Awesome. So that's where that's coming from.
So you mentioned mindset in that, and this was something actually that you and I connected on, because Akpene and I catch up, I don't know, maybe every couple of weeks, just to brainstorm on various different things. We met in a networking group, but I think the reason we keep doing our catch-up calls is because we have some commonalities in our mindset, in that I find you to be very open-minded. You're always, looking at things in a different way. That's the other thing that I found really valuable in our conversations. So when it comes to mindset, a lot of people talk, it's especially popular now, talking about a growth mindset. What are your thoughts on a growth mindset versus any other type of mindset?
Yeah, I hear the words bandied about, and I try to figure out what that means, and I try to figure out if they understand what that means. They keep using that word. I'm not sure they know what that means. So what is the growth mindset? What's the purpose? What are you wanting to do? Like, where are you growing towards? Like, yeah, I have questions. I have a lot of questions.
Right.
I like to clarify things. And so what does that mean to you? Are you just wanting more profits? Well, there's a lot of ways to go about doing that. And I think we step in the way of ourselves a lot, because we do what other people tell us to do, or what other people tell us is successful, but we're very unique. And what works for John might not work for Steve, which may not work for Akpene.
Right.
And so really understanding where are you growing to? What are you doing? And why do you want to do it? I think is very, very important before you start saying, okay, I have this growth mindset, and these are the 5 steps on how to do this. I'm like, okay, sure.
See, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when we have conversations. Is sometimes I'll say something and you'll make a comment like that, and I'll go, yeah, I think I kind of parroted that. I need to really think more about what I'm saying. Tell us about, I know from our conversations, you have a varied array of services and types of people that you work with. So could you tell our audience a little bit about your business and
Mhm.
some of the different services that you offer to the people
Sure.
that you work with?
Yeah, and I offer different services. I do small business coaching, I do consulting, and I do speaking and training. And they sound different, but again, I have a purpose in mind, a goal in mind, and that's why I do what I do. The small business coaching is for startups and small business owners, entrepreneurs, whatnot, people who are starting up. And I just had a conversation with my assistant, and actually really knowing my strengths. And my strengths is really helping people, again, unfold their potential, gain clarity for what they want to do, and carry them through like the first year or two of their businesses to where they're sustaining or where they're going to a growth mindset. And then I have referrals. I have referral partners. I'm like, I got you through the hiccups, the time when 80% of small businesses fail. I'm I'm on a crusade to change that number. So wanting to be a sustainer of things. And so what I do is like I talk with people, I'll look at their, SWOT analysis, their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, things like that. Look at their mindset, where they're going. Look at, okay, what's your vision, your mission, your goals? Do you have them? Okay, if you don't have them, let's figure out what they are so that we have a place to move forward. One of my favorite stories is in Alice in Wonderland. I think, I'm not sure if I shared that with you, is that when Alice meets up with the Cheshire Cat, and she asks him it. I don't know actually what it is, but
I don't either.
yeah. So she asks which path that she should take, and the Cheshire Cat responds, "Well, where do you want to go?" And she responds, "Well, anywhere, I suppose." And then it responds, "Well, then any path will take you there." And so I like that resonated with me, is like, if you don't know where you want to go, then you can go anywhere. You can do anything. And so, but it doesn't necessarily get you to a conclusion, a goal. So I help people clarify where they want to go so that they can go down the right paths. And the right path is not always a straight line. In fact, the right path is often not a straight line. And so it's walking people through the, you know, the wins and the disappointments and things like that, and make sure that they know that they have a goal in mind and all that stuff. So that's the business coaching. And then I have a process management, project management background, and I'm a geek and a nerd, and I love that stuff. And so I do operations for a publishing company just to keep my hand in, the gears running and things like that. I do project management for a lawyer, a small business lawyer, so that actually kind of still fits in. And then I realize that as I'm talking to people, I'm answering the same questions, or I am asking the same questions to people. So I'm pulling together some speaking and training to be able to disseminate that um, on a broader basis. So those are kind of all the things that I do.
So
Well,
that's
not all, but
yeah, you do. You actually do a lot more. I know
yeah,
from our conversations, but I think
yes,
that gives people a good idea of
yeah.
the different things that you could help people with.
Hmm.
That story that you use as an example, I think, is a good illustration of a couple of the points that we talk about with achievements and goals,
Hmm.
and then the purpose and priorities. So one question that I am curious about when it comes to goals, I try to be open-minded. So sometimes that can create confusion, right? And
Hmm.
for a long time, I struggled with this, where I would listen to certain people saying, you have to have clear, well-defined goals, and they have to be smart goals. And, they have all these rules around setting goals and working towards goals. And then I remember one of the guys that I used to listen to a lot years ago, one of his favorite people in self-improvement was John Wooden, who was a coach way, way back in the day for UCLA basketball. I think they won like 10 national championships. His thing was, all I want you to focus on is getting better. We're gonna work every day in practice to get better. Don't worry about the other team or any goals. And I looked at that and I thought, but over here they say define, you got to work towards them. Over here, it's kind of more loosey goosey. What are your thoughts? What's your school of thought kind of on how to approach goals?
I am more on that basketball coach side. I'm a huge fan of what's his name? Is it Stephen Jim somebody Keller? Um, and I have the book
I'm not
somewhere.
sure.
He wrote a book called Do One Thing. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
yes, and and if you read that, it's talking about having um, a main goal. And then he breaks it down into, okay, have a main goal for your family, for your business, all, these things, and do that. And then you measure. So it's kind of like project management, going back to my project management background. You have this one goal, and then you have tasks that lead up to these goals. So I think some of what's happening with the other thing that you mentioned is that you have all these tasks that you have to do, and there's a framework around those tasks and all that stuff, and you're majoring on the minors.
Mm,
And so you want the major thing, and then as you looking at the major thing, the things that fall off of it or the things that come out of it actually goes towards your goals. So the example of the basketball thing is you want to do better, be better. Well, what do you need to do to be better? Realize I suck at the free throw thing, so I'm going to practice doing free throw shots. I can do 3 point shots all the time, so I don't need to work on that, but
right.
concentrate on that. The other thing I that people don't realize is that I encourage people to do like short term, long term, and midterm goals, because things are going to change. You're going to meet some goals that you didn't realize that you could meet, and it doesn't mean that you have to keep pounding the pavement or whatever. Sometimes your goal will change. So if you've met them, or if you realize that this short term goal is actually not in line with my long term goal, change it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't be so hidebound, because that was what your goal is. I think you had mentioned that you had a client, or you were in part of a business that you were being successful, or they were being successful, they were making money, they were, that was their success, but they looked at their business plan and saying, well, we're not doing
Oh,
things on
yeah.
this business plan. And you're like,
Yeah.
do you want to change things because you're successful to align with the plan, or do you want to reassess your plan and see, is this my goal? Okay, this is my goal and I met it. Now I need new goals.
Yeah. That was a buddy of mine that I used to work with. He started a new business, and it was like the 1 year anniversary. And him and his partners
Hmm.
were looking at the business plan and the results for the year. And
Yeah.
I remember the phrase that stuck with me is the one partner said, well, we're not following the plan. The other
Hmm.
partner said, but we're doing great. Do you want to follow the plan, or do you want to follow the money? I've
Hmm.
always tried to remember that.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that was like a good kind of a nutshell way to think
Yeah.
about that.
And it's a good question. Is the plan to get more money, or is the plan something different? And then you have to make a decision. Okay, my plan was to, help the community. Well, I'm making money, and that's not, those are two different things. But if your plan was an end goal to get, earn the money, you're doing it.
You just made me realize too, this is a good example, I think, of if you work with a coach, I'd be willing to believe to assume that John Gooden probably did have lots of concrete goals for his
Hmm.
team, but maybe he just focused his team on just getting better. And
Hmm.
he behind the scenes was giving them the tasks to get better that would lead them to all those concrete goals.
Hmm.
But I think that's one of the values that you can bring as a coach, is that you can kind of free their mind up a little bit to stop worrying about a lot of the details.
Hmm.
I got you. I'm your coach. Just focus on these. I never thought about that until you said what you said. This is what I love about our conversations. You make me think about things differently a lot. Um, so
Yeah,
the
I get into trouble a lot because people are like, that just kind of ruined my trajectory. Thank you very much. I'm like, you're welcome.
so this makes me think about another thing that I think a lot of people get tripped up with, and I'm curious your thoughts on when people talk about like mission, vision, goals. That seems to be a source of confusion for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Can you give us your take on kind of how you break things down from the highest level and then sort of chunk them down?
Yeah. Yeah, I can, because I actually have I helped a bunch of nonprofit starts. And so a lot of that is what they concentrate on. And so I talk about vision, and vision is basically your end goal. It's like, what do you want to see happen? Where are you going? What is your purpose for being here? That's the thing that probably won't really change. Is okay, this is why I started it. This is my ethos. This is who I am. Okay. Your mission is, how are you going to get there? That one you want to reassess every year, every 5 years, and all that stuff, because you may say, my goal for getting to my mission, or the way I'm going to get to my mission, is to do this. Okay, so I did this and it's working, so I'm going to keep doing this. Or I did this and we realized that we need to add this in order to actually get to our goals. So that's going to change. Um, and you have to actually be on a constant reassessment schedule, so that you know that you're like, here's your I don't know if people can see that you have your goal right here, and you're starting here. You're going to have to take corrective measures, because sometimes you're going slightly to the left and you're like, oh, okay, we need to do the right, like move to the right and things
Mhm.
like that. And then your so that was the mission, vision, and values. Your values are your, again, your ethos. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the mission. And this is happening with some people, that if I'm doing the mission and I'm reaching my goal, but I'm compromising my values, then are you reaching your goal? So what is your value system that you're putting into place? And how are you going to accomplish it? Like, if my it, if my thing is that I am going to, I don't know the example, but it could be ridiculous. Is that it's my goal to make sure everybody, reaches an end goal. But if by the time they reach it, they're worn out, they hate each other, they hate themselves, then you haven't really reached your goal.
Right.
So what values are going to you putting it into place so that you reach your goal with healthy people at the
Right.
end?
Yeah, I think a classic example I think of with that clash, that sort of cognitive dissonance, is I have a goal to make a certain amount of income to
Hmm.
provide for my family, but family is a very high a goal that I hold in high regard, and I work so much that I'm neglecting my family time. I think that's one of, like, small business owners, especially, like,
Hmm.
classic clashes
Yeah.
um, of those. So yeah, and I could really see how working with a coach like you could help people get some clarification on that, and then do that periodic coaching, make
Hmm.
sure that they're doing sort of a mental reconciliation there to make sure they're on that path.
Yeah.
Um, so Steve just did a little research for us. Gary Keller, the one thing, is
Gary
that
Keller.
their
Yes,
Gary
yes.
Keller? Okay,
I'm
perfect.
reading so many books, like, for the life of me, I couldn't remember the first name. So, yeah.
We'll put that in the show notes. So
Hmm.
what other books are some of the favorites or classics in your mind?
Classic that I actually went out and bought again because I couldn't find my copy was Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yep.
Fantastic. And it's actually, I was pulling an anecdote from it, to help me with some of my decisions. And so that's a really good one. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. That's
Got
a
it. Got it.
classic that I still use to this day.
Yep.
One thing that may not be a common thing, but I think it's hugely valuable, is Boundaries for Leaders.
Boundaries for, okay, hold on a
Yes.
second. I got to write this down. That's a new one on me.
Uh huh.
Boundaries for leaders. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Let me see if I have the. Oh, there it is. Dr. Henry Cloud. I have like three piles of books around me. So, yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. The other ones I've
Mhm.
heard of, but that one's a new one. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I think, and it feeds into the one thing, like we were talking about,
Okay.
is that it's a good thing. One of the greatest phrases from that book is that you are ridiculously in charge.
Oh, I
Um,
like that.
yeah, it's really great, but it also it's talking about you have the ability to say no. And some of the stuff that we victimize ourselves is, this is happening, this is happening. This actually happened to my assistant. She goes, I'm allowing these to happen. I am allowing these people to cross my boundaries. And I realize I'm in charge of how I feel because of this. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So that
I have
that's
to
a good
grab that one.
one. Hmm. And let's see, what else am I reading? That um, I like Susan Cain's Quiet. Uh,
Ah, yes.
yes, the power of an introvert in a world that can't stop talking.
Talking.
Hmm.
Yeah, you and I have had some good conversations about that.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's what do you think about introversion? Everybody could learn that would be helpful, even if they're, because we've talked about this and there's lots of things that people don't understand about introverts, but what is something that you could share that might help anyone
Hmm.
communicate better back and forth between introverts, extroverts, or even someone in the middle?
There's so many things. One of the things that I didn't mention is that I do teach high schoolers, middle schoolers, and high schoolers about life skills, and I teach an introversion class. And a lot of the misconception is introverts are shy, they don't speak, and all that stuff. And people are surprised to learn that I'm an introvert. And an introvert, there's so many things about dealing with introverts and extroverts. And there was a rise in I guess, awareness of the introversion, and so there's conflict there. And we're in a world where we can have both coexisting,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we actually help one another. And one of the things about introverts is not that they're shy, is that there's several things about it that there's, with a lot of people around, they need time to recharge on their own. So they're
Mm-hmm.
not all, and there's a scale of it. So you have people who can like hang out with people and that's fine. But then like for me, I can't do more than 2 or 3 networking groups a week. Otherwise I get cranky and I may say something that other people will regret. So I know this about me. So I make sure that I put that into my schedule. And in fact, my assistant knows that when she's scheduling things for me, to be able to be aware of some of these things. Introverts also in a meeting, some people don't realize, is that they need time to process. So they need it would be great for introverts to get an agenda ahead of time, not at the beginning of a meeting. Or if they need to contribute to something, or if there's a question that's being presented and people want to throw out ideas, don't pick on them first, because a lot they think through things, and it's not because they're dumb, it's because they want to think through. They're introverting, they're internalizing their thought process. So that's what happens with that. So there's several things about that that can lead to misunderstanding. But if we just take a step back, we realize, okay, no, this is what's happening. Okay, and so I can have grace for who you are, and I can understand why you do what you do. I don't do it, but I can understand why you do what you do, and I'm going to have
Mm-hmm.
grace for that, as long as you have grace for the way I do things and why I do things the way I do.
Yeah. So grace or even awareness as a starting point, but for our audience, depending on what studies you look at, somewhere between a third to a half of the population are introverts. So part of the reason I brought it up is that if you're not one yourself, if you're in a room with other people, look to your left and your right. There's,
Mm-hmm.
one or both of those people might be an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so those are some great tips about introversion. Um, have you found that through this pandemic, I consider myself somewhat of an introvert, and I have found my girlfriend's very much an extrovert. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that with the pandemic and the lockdown and all those things, it's been like a dramatic difference in how we've processed it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that with clients you work with, or just people in general that you've come in contact with through all this, and differences how they process it?
Yeah, I think um, introversion, extroversion is not the only scale. You have to take into consideration a lot of things. But one of the things that people, I saw a shirt that said that introverts say they've been preparing for the pandemic all their lives. It was fantastic. But you're seeing studies and you're seeing reports now that introverted people are actually really struggling because they have family at home. And so kids don't go to school, and then
Right.
their partners don't go to work. So there's people around all the time. And so what did I say about introverts? They need time alone to recharge. There's
Yep.
no time alone. And so they're like going slightly crazy. And then you're extroverted. Some people are fine because they can do a Zoom meeting all the time. All the time. And they're
Hmm.
going like, I'm gonna talk to this person. I don't this is not so bad. This is great and all that stuff. So there's some dichotomy in some of that. So people need to realize, okay, this is who I am and this is how I am not being recharged. I'm not taking the self-care for this.
Hmm.
You have some extroverts like, I can't wait to see people again because Zoom is not enough. And I understand that. And introverts are like, I can't wait to, see people because then I can walk away and not say, and people
Yeah.
can not say, we'll just get on a Zoom call real quick. And you're like, no.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned something that's been a hot topic for me, and you know this because I've mentioned it in some of our networking groups, self-care, right?
Mhm.
Especially for small business owners. We get so busy with all the day-to-day of running a business. And then, if you have a family and you've got other people that you need to take care of, self-care is something that's kind of bubbled up as a big new topic. I'm
Mhm.
curious if you have any habits or routines that you found helpful, specifically with self-care, but it could be even in general,
Mhm.
that you might be able to share with people just from that standpoint of habits or routines.
I already mentioned one because I was getting the Zoom fatigue, quote
Hmm.
unquote, and I realized that I cannot schedule meetings all day long, every day, all day, just because I
Okay.
can. So knowing what my limits are, and my limits are 3 to 4 meetings, so I have to make sure that that's happening. I'm also not what you would call a morning person, bright tailed and bushy eyed. I had a meeting yesterday at 7:15 in the morning.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen again. Like, ever. I
But see,
did it
these
as a
types of
favor to a friend, but that is just like my husband was laughing at me as I was trying to function and, be able to get my brain and my mouth to get together. So I have settled my schedule where I can be working like, well, essentially what I do is that I start my business day at 10 o'clock. I do housework and all that stuff, and then I, work basically from 10 to 6, and then I'm very, very careful about evening meetings because I do volunteer and all that stuff, and I'm in my first year of marriage, and so my boundary is that I'm not going to fill my meetings or my evenings with different meetings because I'm spending time with my husband. So those are boundaries that you have to bring in. I have to be comfortable with saying no.
that's
And I think that's a lot of it is that we're not comfortable with saying no.
Yeah, for me that it for sure. But
Mhm.
boundaries, that's a good takeaway for me for sure, probably for everyone, is that boundaries are a key piece of that self-care.
Mhm.
Knowing when to say no, things to say no to, even the timing,
Yeah.
right? Because I think most people listening would probably, if they really gave it some thought, could pretty quickly answer the question, are you a morning person or not? And then use that to kind of guide them with some of their
Uh-huh.
routines and their boundaries. Um, you mentioned in several conversations we've had a Slaying Giants workshop that
Yes.
you've been working on. Tell us about what that workshop is going to be, who it's for,
Mhm.
and when it's going to be.
I'm super excited for it. Okay, sorry, I had to get that out. So I think I was reading a book or something, and I was realizing that there's a lot of concepts that I do want to get out to small business owners, and it concentrates on several different things. What I spoke on a little bit before is about identity, who we are, about, kind of some of the task management type things, mindset change. And I realized as I was reading this book, I could pull this together in a workshop. It would be fantastic. And a lot of what it is we run into things in our business or even in our lives that seem to stop us in our tracks. And I wanted to talk about how we deal with that. And so I have pulled together this workshop called Slaying Giants.
I love
Um,
that name, by the way.
yeah, it's I do too. I do too. It just came out and I was like, this I'm sticking with this. I'm sticking with this title. But it really is because that's some of the things that we confront seems too big for us. So we talk about, bringing mountains down to molehills. And we talk about equipping ourselves to be able to, even if we can't bring the mountains down to the molehills, equip ourselves to climb the mountain. Um, and So I am actually trying to minimize it into a 5 week course, and I'm hoping to have it out by the end of March, early April. And we'll have it on my website. I'm going to do a pilot course for first, because I want feedback. I want to know, okay, is the information I'm giving you, I know it's good, but is it helpful for you? Is this something that you feel like you could tell other people about?
So
So
is it going to be a recorded course, or are you going to be doing
I'm going to do
webinars or?
Yeah, I'm going to do a live webinar, well, kind of a live teaching because it's going to be interactive. Everybody every
Okay.
week is going to have stuff to do. It's
Okay.
not going to fix your business in 5 weeks, but it will help change your mindset, your perspective, I should say.
Okay. But this
Yeah.
will all be live, you
Hmm.
delivering and being
Right.
interactive with
Yeah.
people. So it'll be once a week over the 5 or 6 weeks
Hmm.
that you do. Okay,
Yes.
great.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. That's one thing that I struggle with because there's a lot of evergreen courses that people can do where people put online. And I think that's a valuable thing because with time at a resource, a high priority, it's hard to try and figure out a time. But
Mhm.
the way that I deliver material takes involvement from the people that I'm teaching. And I'm struggling with that aspect and I don't have an answer. So I'm going to continue doing things the way I know how and the way that I see is effective,
Mhm.
until I see a need to change.
So you mentioned a few things in there that made me think of the word accountability, because you're
Hmm.
talking about the recorded courses, which that's something that's missing with
Hmm.
those. Where do you see accountability fitting in for small business owners? It's probably kind of universal for everyone, but especially for small business owners, even like myself, or just a one person show.
Hmm.
What advice would you have for someone that doesn't have sort of a built in structure in their business of people that they're accountable to? How can solopreneurs handle that?
Yeah.
Any tips for
I,
that?
yeah. Well, I'm a business coach. So I'm going to tell you, get a coach, get a mentor. If you don't have the means, the finances, whatever, get yourself a good what's the word, mastermind group
Okay.
that you can throw ideas off of. If everybody around you is telling you yes, or you're not getting any input, you're going to go off the rails pretty soon. You can't move in a vacuum. You can't live in a vacuum. Um, and so it's people. Have a coach, have a mentor,
Mhm.
have a group of people that will not always say yes to you.
Yeah, that's super valuable. I think
Mhm.
Ray Dalio is one I heard talk about. What does he call it? Radical transparency. Like
Mhm.
he doesn't want a bunch of yes people. He's like proactive about asking people to disagree with him because he kind of wants to test his thoughts. Um,
I have a thing about the difference between transparency and vulnerability.
oh, tell me.
Vulnerability, because people use transparency all the time, and I think it's I get frustrated because transparency is allowing people to see into you, and that's fantastic, and people are being more transparent. But the question is, are you being vulnerable? Are you allowing people to see into you and speak into you? Um,
Hmm.
just letting people see who you are, that's fine, that's fantastic. But if somebody brings up something, you're like, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. You need to
Hmm.
be open to input. You need to be vulnerable to being wrong. You need to be, and just because somebody brings up a thought that you don't agree with, you don't have to take their thought, but you have to consider it.
That
So,
brings up actually a question that I got recently about this topic about the balance of, people are getting much more aware of bringing, I'm using air quotes here, the whole person to work, right?
mhm,
And there's much more focus now about helping people sort of embrace their whole person.
mhm.
But the question I got was, how do you balance that with making sure that people are still appropriate with like not oversharing and that type of thing? Any thoughts on how things people could do to kind of guide them with the balance
Mhm.
to not overshare, but still be vulnerable in a productive way?
Yeah. Well, being vulnerable, you're gonna have selective people that you're vulnerable with. You don't have to get feedback from everybody. So you do have that. You can be transparent. I see this as like, what is it, convergent circles. So you have people that you share everything, you take their input and all that stuff. You have people that you share everything, but okay, some of your advice is a little messed up. I'm not going to do that. And then you have some people and you're like, yeah, no, you're not seeing into my world. Again, it's coming back to boundaries as far as that's concerned. I don't remember which book it is that I read this, but balance is a term that I think may be doing some people harm because balance is not a noun, it's a verb, and it's going to always, well, it's an action noun. So you think of a balance beam,
Mhm.
and you get on a balance beam, and your muscles are continually adjusting to keep you on the beam. So there's
Hmm.
always movement to keep you on that beam. So if you want balance in your, work life balance, there's going to be seasons where your work is going to take over. And then there's going to be seasons where your work is going to be in the background. That balance is going to be a give and take. And it's something that's always moving. And
Hmm.
you have to be aware of that and say, okay, this is where I am right now, and this is what I need to do in order to be healthy right now. Now, okay, I've been in this season for 3 months or 6 months. Okay, now I can focus on something else. I can talk to my family. You know, mommy needs to be at work for a little bit while longer, and it's just going to last these 6 weeks or something like that. It's a constant movement. And so we need to be aware of, we need to figure out what's that one thing that's going to help us move forward. And so, what are these tasks to these one things? And that helps us with our internal balance and our internal kind of well being
Hmm.
as far as that's concerned. So, that's my opinion about balance.
So taking that kind of one step further, with when it comes to balance, one of the big areas that I hear a lot about now that people are struggling with balance going forward is there's all these companies that went completely virtual, so they just sent everybody home. And
Hmm.
now there are some companies that are saying, oh, we can start to open our offices and have people back face to face. And I know you and I have talked about this as trainers. We love face to face because that's the most effective, right? There's so
Hmm.
much lost in the virtual environment. What are your thoughts though on um, when when the situation becomes that we can be 100% back to face? What are your thoughts on the balance of maybe some of the advantages of staying virtual part of the time, or for some of the things that businesses do?
Hmm. I would look to what are the purposes, what are the goals of the businesses, and how can they accomplish that? And who are the people that they have in their business? Like my husband needs to separate his home and work. So as soon as he could go back to work, he did. He's part of the like communications team, so he went to work. Some of his coworkers stay at home, and so what works for people? Like there's a template and there's a format, and I'm like, screw the template. What is working for you? And what's working for
Yeah.
your business, and how it, and let's get to the bottom line. Is your business moving forward, and are your employees healthy at the end of it?
Okay. I want to shift gears here real quick before I turn the floor over to Steve so he can ask you a few questions. I've been monopolizing your time here, but Um, I'm such a curious person. I love asking this question to people. You part of what you do as a business is you're a coach, right?
Hmm.
When I would venture to guess when you were a kid, being a business coach probably wasn't the most popular job in the world. It may not have even existed as like a job title back then.
Yeah.
Thinking about back when you were a kid, did you have something that you wanted to be when you were a kid? That when you grew up you wanted to be?
Yeah, no, there were two phases.
Okay.
So for the longest time, I wanted to be a nurse. My mom was a nurse. I wanted to be like my mom. I wanted to help people. Then I realized I couldn't deal with blood all day long. That's not going to work out for me real well.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the concept of that. I liked all that stuff. And I was like, then I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to just be able to present to people a way to relate to some things. And I actually, as a youth leader, I was a director of their creative arts program, and I was good
Mm.
at it. I was very good at it. And then I realized I told somebody that I like painting with people. I like seeing, and you'll hear what I do in what I did at that time. I like using people's gifts and talents to create a story or to create a parable or to create something. So I saw the value in the different things that people did, and I did things differently and may have ruffled a few feathers because of the way I did things. Not may have, I did. So I was younger and stupider then. Now I'm just older and stupider. But
So it sounds
yeah.
like with what you do now, you've the two things that I heard you say that are a perfect tie into what you do now is the idea of nursing appealed to you because of you like the idea of helping people,
Mm-hmm.
and being an actress, you like the idea of being creative and relating to things.
Mm-hmm.
Those two things seem like huge strengths as a coach
Mm-hmm.
that would
Yeah.
bring a lot of value.
Yeah.
Um,
And what it
I,
taught me is that what thing what things appear or what you think that you want, and you may think about, okay, I want this and this is the end goal of how to do that, is not always how it happens. Like, you have the end goal and how to do that. You have to kind of be loose in your hand holding of what you want, because you may get there, but the journey may look completely differently than what you had thought about.
so how did you get it from your previous work
Hmm.
doing process improvement? What was it that actually made you decide to start a business as a business coach?
I was at a nonprofit. I was working with college students, and I was the Jill of all trades. I was doing executive management. I was a campus director. I was doing event management. I was their HR department from the floor up. And I loved staff development. Loved staff development days. I loved the coaching and mentoring. Hated the paperwork. Just did
I
that.
could relate.
But I love putting systems and process into place. And so when I left there, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I did take a year to like really assess, and I picked up some freelance contracts during that time, and talking with people and thinking about it, somebody said that you should be a counselor. I'm like, I'm not going back to school for that. I don't want to deal with
Mm.
people's past mess. I don't want to do that. But then I realized I want to help people move forward. And so they said, well, why don't you be a coach? And I'm like, I can get paid for that. Like,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I feel very similar in that sense that I thought I wanted to be a psychologist for many of the same reasons. But
Mhm.
when I discovered coaching, the big difference that appealed to me was it's not about what's wrong with you and how do we fix it. It's
Mhm.
more about just what do you want more of,
Yeah.
right? And
It's
then
like
and then helping them put
it's
together.
still a little bit of how to fix it, but it's how do we fix it so that you can move forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Well, let me turn this over to Steve real quick. Make sure he gets a chance to ask you a few questions before we run out of time. I want to respect your time as well. So, Steve, you want to jump
Thanks,
in?
John. I appreciate that. Great conversation, Akpene. I think one of the things that I really got out of this is you do an awful lot of work with small business owners, it sounds like.
Mhm.
And within that framework, quick question that came to mind was, what consistent habits would you recommend to small business owners? So those folks that are listening, what are the things that either they miss or things that if they consistently did these as small business owners, they could be more successful or have a better business? What are some of the things that you found in that regard?
Um, I'm going to start off with what you shouldn't do. Stop stinking multitasking. Multitasking is just a lie, and it gets you so fragmented. So, what I would say to business owners is to make sure that you have a goal and set priorities. Because when you do that, again, it goes to boundaries. You know how to say no to the things that don't feed to your goal, and you create more time to the things that do feed toward towards goal. So some of the things I had a talk that's called avoiding the oh shiny syndrome. There's so many tools out there and so many fancy tools, and somebody's using this and it's like, oh, I should try this and I should try this. I'm like, if you know what your priorities are and your goals are, and you're like, okay, I'll take a yeah, no, that's not going to help me, and you move on, and it's okay. So it takes a lot of the stress and anxiety out if you know who you are and know what your goals are.
And you're right on, because how many times, how many new shiny objects are there that come across our desk every day? I mean, just go out to Amazon to look for anything, and there's a brand new thing that pops
Hmm.
up that says, "Oh, you need to buy this," or
Yes.
wherever you go, and
Hmm.
that is so true, and that ties really well together with the multitasking piece. So if you could stay focused on just that one thing instead
Yeah.
of and John and I have talked about this in our own
Hmm.
experiences. It's so easy to get diverted because there's so many things that you can do. I guess
Yeah.
the other question that ties into that a little bit is, let's look at post pandemic, or as one of our folks called it, AC, after COVID. Uh, what would you encourage business owners to do today so that when things really transition, is there anything that they can do or should do that's really going to put them in a strong position moving forward from your perspective?
Uh, that is a really good question. What I do, and I'm doing this because of COVID, but also because and we're looking to relocate, is build your relationships, build your partnerships, your networking relationship, build that. Because we're people, we live in the world, and it's easier right now to do it. We do have Zoom, and as much as I, kind of knock having 12 Zoom meetings in a day, don't do that unless you're an extrovert, and that just gives you joy. But build your relationships. Be strategic about the relationships that you build, so that when you're actually out in the world, you already have something to work off of. You have a network that you're working out of, um, and it just makes things easier moving forward.
Fantastic.
It's
Thank you
really
very much. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. John, I'm going to turn it back to you and let you wrap things up.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Well, Akpeni, I appreciate you investing the time with us and the value that you delivered to all of our audience out there. There are a couple of quotes that I wrote down from you throughout
Mhm.
this that I really love. But is there anyone that you haven't shared with us yet, a particular quote
Hmm.
that you really love?
Um, I think it changes from situation and day to day, but right now I have one that's actually sitting on my desk because I like it so much.
Cool.
Um, it's from Thomas Edison, and actually, a friend of mine had introduced me to this quote. It says, opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. I enjoy that
Uh,
one because we talk as small business. A lot of the times we think, okay, if I'm lucky enough, we'll do this, and if I'm, you just need to be in front of the right people at the right place and all that stuff. But we miss some of the opportunities in front of us because we actually have to put effort into it. And so it's again a change in mindset. What is something that will move me forward? even if I have to invest time, hours, emotional equity into it.
Yep. That's a great quote. I think that is a great way to wrap up this show today. Thanks again for your time, and we will see and hear you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.